Got
good
it. Okay.
transitional position into how our teams will set up, transfers, and yeah, that's it. Pretty much just the transfers and how our team will set up. We started with me for the last prompt, so this time we'll
Mhm.
start with you. Where do you see Maresca taking you guys? How do you see him
Yeah.
lining up? Roster time, obviously you have people coming in back from loan, you have people who will probably be shipped. What do you see happening for Chelsea in 24,
Yeah.
25?
Well, um, I think I already touched on it a little bit. I think 4-3-3 is his formation, his preferred formation. Like Pep, um, the inverted fullback is huge. So I expect that inverted fullback. If we're gifted, it can be either side. Kukurea is a really good inverted fullback, but Reece James played in the midfield for Wigan. He's also played in the midfield very rarely for Chelsea, but I think he's made some substitute or like late appearances in the midfield for Chelsea. So it's not a position that he's uncomfortable with. And if it could help him avoid being injured so much, that could be a really it could be huge. And I mean his passing ability is so good. Like he's physical, like he would fit really well in the midfield, especially alongside this certain person that I think will play the deep role. So it's a 4-3-3, but there is a deep holding midfielder. But then, of course, when the fullback inverts, it forms a pivot. Um, so I think I, I guess we can kind of combine with transfers. Goalkeeper, where it all starts, is a position that needs to be addressed this summer. I think Georgi Petrovic did well when he stepped in, but I think our perception of Georgi Petrovic is what we saw of Robert Sanchez. And like we felt a little bit safer with Petrovic in goal. And actually, when you look at Sanchez's stats side by side with Petrovic, Sanchez looks like a much better goalkeeper, but it's kind of an optics thing. Like when watching Chelsea and when watching Petrovic in goal and Sanchez, you just feel a lot safer when Petrovic is in goal. But I don't think that at this moment Petrovic is above a backup goalkeeper for Chelsea. I think he needs some time to maybe sit back. I mean, it was huge for him. I mean, we signed him from New England Revolution for 14 million this past summer, and the fact that he was a starting goalkeeper for Chelsea for a major part of the season is huge. And I still think he's a great like cup goalkeeper, especially being in Europe. I see him starting in the Conference League, but I think Enzo Maresca loves like a footballing goalkeeper. He needs a goalkeeper that's comfortable with his feet, that can read defenses well, read the press well, and he's able to comfortably distribute the ball. And one thing that Enzo Maresca does that Pep did in the treble season is a lot of times when the press is maybe a little bit overwhelming, the goalkeeper steps up into the defense to form like a back four when the goalkeeper is one of the center backs. Um, Adding another man, adding like a true like 11 man build up. And so I don't think that suits Petrovic. I think he's young enough where his ability with the ball at his feet can be developed and coached, and he can improve there. But I think we need to sign either a more experienced goalkeeper or a goalkeeper that just suits that better. And so I think ideally, it's very unlikely. I would love Emi Martinez in that role. I don't think he would leave Aston Villa. It would be pretty crazy of him to leave Aston Villa with them in Champions League next year. But yeah, I just love Emi Martinez. I think he would fit that role super well. I think his distribution is good. I think a likely target that I could see us pursue, especially with us starting off our transfer window with Adara Bioyo, I think that's a sign of what's to come this transfer window. I think we're going to kind of step away from youth a ton. I think we're still going to sign some young players, but I think we're going to go for more experience. I could see a player that we go after who's good with his feet, especially good with long distribution, is Jordan Pickford. I could see us going after Jordan Pickford, and I could see him being that he's almost 30. He's kind of in his goalkeeping prime right now. I could see him potentially wanting to leave Everton if there's a good offer, and I think he would be really I think it'd be good for him because obviously there's a lot more competition for his job now in England. Um, if he made a step up and he maybe went to a better team than Everton, no disrespect to Everton, but I think we could be a good situation for him. And then there are a couple other options. There's Georgi Mamardashvili from Valencia, who we've been linked with a lot, and I think he would be really good. I do like a more experienced option. I think just because I trust in Petrovic's development, and we also have Gaga Slonina, who's on loan, who I think is pretty good with his feet. So maybe even Maresca takes a look in preseason and sees like Slonina is good enough for me. Maybe Slonina just becomes starting goalkeeper. That's very unlikely, but um, that is a position that needs to be addressed desperately. So, yeah, I think Mamardashvili is a good one, as well as Villarreal's goalkeeper, Jorgensen, maybe is his last name. I think he had good like distribution numbers. But goalkeeper, that's the position I expect us to go for. Um, I think center back is probably done. Obviously, I mentioned we signed Tosin Adarabioyo, and so as I said, that left back when the right back converts tucks in, I don't see that role suiting Ben Chilwell super well. Ben Chilwell could play on the wing like he did for Pochettino at the start of the season, but that's not his best role either, and he was really frustrating when he played on the wing because his decision making just isn't what it needs to be for a winger. There's a lot of opportunities where if a winger was in that position, you'd expect them to shoot, but Ben Chilwell would often opt to like go for a cutback or pass it across when there really wasn't an option, and he should have just shot. And actually, he has a good finish on him, so it's surprising he didn't in a lot of those situations. So I don't think that role suits Chilwell super well. Also, in recent interviews, it doesn't really seem like Chilwell's heart is with Chelsea anymore because it's just such a different club than when he joined. I could see Chilwell leaving Marco Correa there at left back. I expect him to stay because he was really, really good and he suits Maresca ball well. But also, I could see Levi Colwill playing there and actually doing a really good job there. I know he played left back for Pochettino, but it would be a little bit of a different role because it would basically be left center back still, and he would be responsible for a lot of progressive passing in that position. And so left back, I don't really expect any signings, but I expect maybe Chilwell to go, and then maybe we can see what happens with Ian Matson. I still expect him to leave. But yeah, going into the midfield, I think the inverted role would work really well for Reece, even though, his crossing ability and being able to run up and down the wing is really good. And that might be a little bit of a waste for that, but like I said, if it could maybe help him not get injured as much, maybe because he's not, so sorry, maybe not running as much. Um, I'm sorry. Uh, I uh I think it's worth it. And Gusto is so young and he's so good. Like Gusto genuinely might be like the best under 21 right back in the world. Um he can be developed and he could be an incredible inverted fullback, or we could just do one fullback inverting the other one running up and down, which could suit Chilwell well if it was on that side, or it would suit James and Gusto really well. Um but I expect the holding midfielder, so there's inverted fullback and a holding midfielder forming a pivot. A lot of people, I think, when they see that in Maresca's system, they would probably say Caicedo because he generally played deeper. But I actually think it would be Enzo Fernandez. I think he makes a lot more sense there because if you look at Maresca's Leicester side, he would play. When you look at Leicester, you would also think Ndidi would be the deepest midfielder. Harry Winks would play a little higher. But Harry Winks actually played that holding role, and Ndidi was a box-to-box midfielder. So Caicedo is used to playing box-to-box. I think Caicedo is a better box-to-box midfielder than Enzo Fernandez because Enzo just can't run. Really, he's not a quick player at all. So I think Lavia and Enzo fit that and super well, and they'd be able to distribute the ball really well. I think that would probably be the best position that Enzo has had his time at Chelsea. I think it takes the most advantage of his skills. I think he would be able to dominate games again because Pochettino just didn't have him playing in a role that really suited him. So I think Caicedo would play more of a box-to-box midfield role like he did for Graham Potter at Brighton, rather than like six that he played for De Zerbi and played last season for us. And I think he has that in him. I think some every once in a while Caicedo just plays like an unbelievable like line breaking pass in like or like an incredible through ball. And so I think taking advantage of that higher up the pitch and also being more box to box, he's good with the ball at his feet. He's good dribbling, so he could dribble a little bit more in that role as well. I think Gallagher would suit that role as well if we hold on to him. And I think we should just because we need players like him. I know that's not a super popular opinion with Chelsea fans, unfortunately. But I think he would suit that role really well. He would suit the NDD role really well because he just kind of mops up, does good defensive work, and he can get involved for a goal. And actually, I think the other right center mid, um, or left center mid, I guess, that the other center mid position is generally a little more attacking. They're a little more involved in build up play. So I actually think that would be Cole Palmer. I think Cole Palmer's future is in the middle of the pitch because he's not going to burn you with pace, especially in this system. I don't really see him playing one of those wide winger roles because Maresca likes those guys to be more pacey, likes them to take on their opponents and be able to. So that I mean, Cole Palmer, I expect him to play there sometimes, but I think this like right center mid or center mid role suits him a lot better. And when the fullback inverts, he'd be able to play in the half space between the striker and the winger, which I actually think is probably Cole Palmer's like favored spot to be on the pitch. And I think he's able to do a lot of damage there. So I think that would utilize Cole Palmer's abilities really well. And I think he'd be able to create a lot and also score a lot of goals still from there. But like I said, wingers are generally really wide. They provide the width of the team, and also he likes guys who can take on their opponents. So Mudryk and Madueke should like excel because they love to take their guys on. They're pacey, they're quick. They also have really good shooting. And I think Nkunku also should be utilized there. Nkunku on the wing rather than at striker. He could also play that like half space eight role because I think he did a lot of his best work at Leipzig playing in the left half space. So that would be like so dangerous. If we had Mudryk, Madueke wide, Cole Palmer, and Nkunku in the half spaces, and then like a new striker. I mean, I love Jackson, but maybe a different profile striker in the middle of them. Like that would be like incredibly dangerous, and that would be really fun to watch. But I expect Sterling to leave maybe. I think this system would suit him well, but I think the directors would also would try to get rid of him maybe. But striker is an interesting position because I think we will sign a striker. I think Jackson had a really good first season despite missing a lot of chances, but it was his first season in the Prem. He's still young. Um, I think we'll go for a new striker, and I think my favorite guy is Benjamin Sesko. He finished off the season really well for Leipzig. He didn't start a ton of games this year, but when he did, he would just score goals for fun. And so Arsenal are also looking at him. I'm sure he will not be an easy guy to get. But he's the kind of profile striker I think we need. I think we need a big target man, a guy who doesn't really get super involved in the buildup. Is just kind of there to put pressure on the back line. He's able to make runs in behind, but also he's able to kind of score some scrappy goals. And I think Chesko would suit that really well. And I think another guy we talked about it is I think if we can't go for Chesko, I think a guy who could kind of fall through on the striker market this summer is because there are so many really good targets that will be available for transfer. I think maybe Guirassy from Stuttgart could be available, and he would be a really interesting option. And obviously, he doesn't have Prem experience. But that would maybe be good for Jackson. He would still have more of an opportunity to play. Shesko is obviously I think, younger than Jackson, I think, and so his minutes would be more prioritized. But Jackson can also play on the left. But yeah, I was very very long. I went in depth, but I think it'll be it'll be exciting. I love the inverted fullbacks. I love like utilizing the half spaces and the wide wingers and um I'm excited to see this possession style of play. It'll be really different. We did have a lot of possession this season, but a lot of it felt like because the players just didn't really know what to do when they had the ball deep, so they would just kind of pass it between. I think this is a more like intentional way to utilize possession. It's a really patient way, and so yeah, I think Maresca, it's a big job for him. It's a big step up. It's a really risky hire, especially on a 5-year deal. But I'm glad we gave him that long, because he really feels like he's part of the project. And like I heard a point recently where like why would Pochettino play like 19-year-olds or something? Like why would he integrate youth players into the squad? Because like he only had a 2-year contract, so of course within that time he's just going to try and win games and use the best players that he can. But Maresca sees this guy could be, a useful piece for me in the next like year or two, but maybe not at the moment. But I still, I should involve him, and so that makes a ton of sense. And so I agree with giving him a longer contract. 5 years plus one is a little bit crazy. But maybe there's like a break clause after 2 years where if he sucks, then we can just like can him and not really lose that much. So, but yeah, I would say it's exciting. I've thought about it a ton, as you can tell. Like the last few days, I've just been thinking about how Maresca is going to play, and he's also like an absolute nerd, like with football, and so he could like just be chefing up something like crazy for Chelsea and how he, the players that he sees and what he thinks would be best. But yeah, with you, Slot, obviously it's a semi-similar. It makes sense for him to take over Jurgen Klopp because there are some similarities in their systems. Um, yeah, how do you expect the team to set up formation-wise? Like players, where do you expect them to be, and then what signings do you expect your club to make?
I mean, I mean, I have so many. Like I literally, as you were talking, I had to go to my own personal file because I have at least four lineups I could tell you why I feel like he could go with, but he transitions from the 4-2-3-1 to the 4-3-3 or 4-3-3 to the 4-2-3-1. But it all depends on what is going to happen. And like I said earlier, like it's just such an exciting time because for once in my life, I don't know like transfers. I don't know what's going to happen. I think as in terms of the team that Jurgen has built right now, I'm the only one that's came out and been like, yeah, I know for sure is going to be here next season is Van Dijk, our captain. Allison, I have a feeling in my heart where it's like, yeah, he's going to stay, but like obviously he's been linked with rumors to Saudi. Salah has been linked with rumors to Saudi for 2 years now, and obviously his whole debacle with Jurgen towards the end of the season. Then it transitioned kind of into a debacle with Liverpool. Like there's a lot of stuff to think about in that sense. But in my heart, it's another player where I'm like, okay, he's probably going to stay.
Mhm.
But I'm like, okay, based on Arne Slot, like, does he want to use Trent this way? Does he want to go back to this way? How does he see Connor Bradley? Like, there's just a lot of stuff that I go into thinking about. But for me personally, the way I would hope is obviously I like his 4-3-3 that he did at Feyenoord. There's a lot of things in the system where he has, whereas between his two wingers, he has an inverted winger, and then he just has a classic winger who's going to stay wide. You have a fullback who can go and support the inverted winger, or you're going to have an inverted wing back behind the winger to play in. Um, there's so much to like process behind it, especially with players like Trent and Connor Bradley. And obviously, we have no six. We've been missing a destroyer for quite some time since Fabinho's left. We have Endo, but realistically, Endo is not going to cut it into a starting lineup for Liverpool right now. He's a great rotational player. I see him more as like a Milner. Something goes wrong, something happens. We insert Endo in there. He's very consistent, very good, and he's good enough to fill in that role as a
Mhm.
rotational player, but not as a starter. But with all that scrambling in my mind, I would say starting in goal, obviously, we have as a sweeper keeper Allison, second to none. No one like him.
Yeah.
I expect Kwanzaa, Konate, and Van Dijk to lead that back line again. We're probably going to see more of an old Van Dijk way we saw in Feyenoord. There's a specific kind of center back that they like to play through. I feel like that's going to be Van Dijk. I'm sure that he's going to switch out Jarrell Kwanzaa because between the three, I feel like Kwanzaa and Van Dijk are our best ball playing defenders. This is going to be a big year for Kwanzaa, obviously, with Van Dijk being 33. Kwanzaa is kind of our future. Konate is also kind of our future.
Mhm.
Um, Konate is the more aggressive one, the more getting stuck in challenges out of all of them. But they all are pretty good at tackling. Robertson, there's been some concerns between fans, and a lot of fans think that this might be his last season. A lot of fans might think he's not starting. Me personally, I would like him to play in that wingback kind of role that we saw at Feyenoord with Hartman. I believe that they have similar games in terms of crossing, in terms of aggression. But obviously, injuries is a big thing. Robertson, we played his lowest amount in terms of starting as 20 games this season. He played in the Prem. So we got to see Joe Gomez kind of fill in that left back role, kind of like how he was playing back when he was younger. Um, we got to see him excel in that as well as an inverted fullback,
Mhm.
kind of like a Gutreda. I feel like we're gonna see him there next season. Just in terms of the fact that he was consistent there. So I would put Joe Gomez there in that role. Trent, I also feel like we're going to, if we don't use that inverted fullback for Joe Gomez, I see Trent being inverted.
Yeah.
Even though I said earlier in the midfield, honestly, if I'm slot, I think he's going to be at that inverted right wing back position simply
Mhm.
because of who I'm going to say is going to play at the six. Um, moving into the six, obviously something like I said we need. My choice, I've heard speculation. Arne Slot really likes Ederson from Atalanta. He's
Mhm.
almost kind of like your Joe Linton kind of type. He can play your six, he can play your eight, he can play your 10. He's a bruiser. in the midfield. Not necessarily a destroyer, but he will get stuck in challenges. He'll use his body, and I feel like somebody like Trent when he's in midfield inverting, that's exactly something that he could use. Exactly something we've been missing.
Yeah.
Endo, like I said, very consistent in what he does, but we're lacking that physical prowess, that physical presence. When we see Endo, he's not as quick on his feet, obviously being 31, going on 32. Um, and the way Ederson plays, he's in terms of Trent, obviously nobody does progressive passes the way Trent does, but
Hmm.
Ederson could also do it every now and then, just like we saw McAllister do when he was playing the six. I
Yeah.
believe we're going to see McAllister move into that eight role, as we
Hmm.
saw when he was moved up into that eight role, kind of gave him that freedom to perform the way that he likes to perform. He's going to play like your typical central midfielder kind of role, kind of like how Bruno is used at Manchester United when he's not playing striker. Um, in that right center mid role, kind of that Mazzala doing floating in crosses. I could honestly see a plethora of options. We could see Harvey Elliott. Harvey Elliott just came out one of the greatest seasons of his life, 4 goals, 11 assists in all
Hmm.
competitions. It's very good. He has a
Yeah.
nice little left foot on him when it cuts in, whips in across, whether it's to Gakpo or Nunez. We saw a lot of that
And
this
like
season.
a ridiculous outside the box finish too.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
He's getting pretty consistent with that long shot. Um, you got Zabazlai, who as well, magical right
Yeah.
foot. He's got a wand. He can hit that long shot. He's pretty good on the ball. He can play make very well. Um, we can see Curtis Jones. Curtis Jones before those guys was shows every now and then when he comes into the lineup why he should be starting or why he should be in that lineup. The way he holds that ball, the way he's able to dribble and go past people is very important, very crucial for our midfield. And also he's one of our best tacklers, which is not a rated part of his game. He's very good in terms of tackling, very good in terms of aggression. He does his job very well as a central midfielder.
Mhm.
But just fitting that Mazzala role that Arne Slot kind of plays, I feel like it's going to be between Zabazalai and Harvey Elliott. Honestly, I feel like it's going to be Zabazalai if he takes that route. If he takes a different route, I could also see Zabazalai playing as that inverted winger on the left-hand side. Um, Considering that, again, with speculation, we see Luis Diaz is heading places with Barcelona, Real Madrid, all this stuff. Um, I don't feel like Luis Diaz will be leaving this season, considering how important he was for us. But just that there is that option that Zabazlai can work in that role. We also have Cody Gakpo, who's going to be for that inverted winger. Arne Slot likes to have the winger receive the ball deep and then transition it and bring it up, progress it up the field, and that's something that suits Gakpo's game very well. Um, Even Luis Diaz, but out of the three, with including I could include Jota who plays the nine, but can also play winger. But out of the three, I could definitely see Cody Gakpo being on that left hand side because that's going to unlock the kind of style of football that Arne Slot wants. That's if he plays that as the inverted winger. If he plays that side as the winger, as he likes to just the traditional stay on your width, stay line, I could definitely see that being Luis Diaz because Luis Diaz is very good at taking the ball, taking you on one, um, creating those chances. Um, in terms of what I think he's going to do, honestly, in terms of which side's going to be the winger, which side's going to be the inverted winger, I think Salah's side is going to be the inverted winger, obviously, because
Mhm.
we know what Salah can do. He loves cutting on that left hand, on that
Yep.
left foot of his, whipping it in. So I believe on that right hand side with Salah, obviously, you were going to have the inverted winger. But in terms of starting, I'll go Luis Diaz as normal, just to as that normal winger, just stay high on your wide line and bring it up. Phil Gomez is going to be inverted, so he's going to have that line all to himself. Um, then we're going to see McAllister at the 8, as I said. We're going to have Zabazlai and Mazzala. At the 9 is where it gets interesting because obviously with Darwin Nunez, not as consistent. We all know what he's capable of on his good day, but he's just not as consistent. Jota, again, another player that we know who's very good on his day, just injury prone. He gets injured left, right, and center, which
Hmm.
leaves Cody Gakpo. Cody Gakpo, with the way that Arne Slot likes to run his forwards as that central forward. We saw something similar with it with Jurgen Klopp. Cody Gakpo kind of struggled to fit into that role in the beginning, but then kind of adapted to it towards the end of this season and the end of last season, kind of adapted to it, scored some pretty important goals for Liverpool, gets in there, is able to hold the ball well with his physical frame. He's 6'4", able to drop deep, receive that ball. Um, in terms of Arne Slot, you're not going to be receiving that ball as deeply. You're just going to be staying more centrally, which is a little cork in terms of Gakpo's game because he needs that kind of freedom to roam, which is why I was talking about that left wing. If we operate with that winger where they're going to drop inside, that would be perfect for Cody Gakpo. But also at center forward, I'm sure it's something that he could definitely adapt to. We've seen him play at center parts of the pitch. He's played the 8 for us. He's played the 9 for us. So that's where it gets kind of intriguing. I believe in terms to fit his game, I could definitely see Arne Slot buying a central forward in your. He has one at Feyenoord. A lot of people are linking him Santiago. I don't
Yeah.
believe that he's going to
Would you
come.
think Jimenez would be a good fit?
I believe he'd be a good fit for what we have going on, but I don't believe that Michael Edwards is going to be able to splash. We know how Michael Edwards likes to operate. I feel like if
Yeah.
it's something that was genuinely going to happen, we would all know by now. Michael Edwards likes to operate behind the scenes and get
Hmm.
those players that fit that criteria, but not
Yeah.
necessarily a big name. So I could see him getting a striker to fill in that position just in the meantime. Obviously, we have youth as well with Jaden Dans. Um, who knows what the future unfolds in that criteria. Also, the same thing with going back to right back, depending on how they switch it. If he wants to play that inverted wing back role, I could see Trent. However, if he does that, just that wing back role that we see with Hartman, Connor Bradley is definitely going to go in there, and I could see Trent moving into the midfield because of the season that Connor Bradley had. If you see the way that he's able to whip in crosses, it's not necessarily the way he has progressive passes, not necessarily the way Trent has it. It's a little different in the sense of he's kind of like your Frimpong. He'll get in there really aggressively, get inside the box almost, cross it across, or if he's on the top of the edge of the box, he's gonna hit it to your 8. Your 8's gonna find the goal. Connor Bradley has been extremely important for our season
Mhm.
this time around. Not a starter yet, but when Trent was out with his hamstring injury, he definitely gave us a reason to see why he should be getting minutes. Same with Kwanzaa. Matip went down. Kwanzaa came in, filled in the role perfectly. Kwanzaa was already playing prior, but he took that as an opportunity and he excelled. Same with Connor Bradley, took that as an opportunity and excelled. I expect those two guys to be playing a lot of minutes next season. But it's just a very exciting time for Liverpool because there's a lot of what ifs. There's a lot of what ifs.
Yeah.
As of now, in terms of that 9 role, I do see Jota staying fit. It would definitely be Jota's. That is
Hmm.
prime for Jota. But again, just like all those questions, what if this person doesn't stay fit? What if he wants to
Yeah.
switch from instead of your left wing, instead of your left back being the inverted wing back, your right back is the inverted wing back, or if your winger is just the traditional winger, or your right winger is the inverted winger. There's a lot of stuff where it could be just altered. And that's what I think I like about Arne Slot's game so much and Liverpool squad is just based on those injuries, he's able to just alter it like that. He's like, oh, okay, this person's down. We can switch it here. No problem. We can switch it here. No problem. We'll keep our opposition on on their toes. Um, but yeah, in terms of just signings, I see the one person that really fits up well in terms of what we want is for sure that Ederson for Atalanta. I've been paying attention more to him this month. And obviously, we saw him in the Champions League, the Europa League final against Bayer Leverkusen, where they absolutely demolished the Bayer Leverkusen. Everyone wants to talk about Lookman, but no
Hmm.
one talks about the importance of that ball being regained within the midfield. The press was very well. They trapped Bayer Leverkusen in tight corners being in that double pivot with Coop Miners. He knows very well how to operate in that. And with that inverted wingback with Trent, it's going to be very similar to playing in a double pivot. Same with
Hmm.
McAllister. We saw that in Brighton. He was why he was able to adapt so quickly is because he was used to playing that double pivot with a player like Caicedo. Caicedo was doing the destroying work, and McAllister was more of a player who was going forward. Trent is going to be like the McAllister in the situation, where Ederson is going to be more like the Caicedo. Ederson's going to get to do more of that destroying work, but also with the way we see Liverpool play, their destroyers tend to go forward. We saw Endo get himself in a lot of chances going forward to take long shots. Fabinho, when he was our destroyer, we saw him getting a lot of chances to score forward, make progressive passes. I think we're going to see the same kind of style from Ederson, not necessarily defensively the same as Fabinho, but in terms of progressive passes, getting involved, getting spraying it, distributing it out to the wingers, we're going to see very similar style from Ederson. Trent is Trent. We all know he has one hell of a long pass, long shot, a crossing. We haven't really seen him cross as much as we used to back during the COVID days, but we know that he's capable of doing so. We know that Connor Bradley is capable of getting in the attack being involved. We know that he's able to get his foot in, stuck in on challenges. He's just as good defensively as he is offensively. We know Joe Gomez is going to have a very healthy season, considering the season he just came off of. He's very capable of playing at that center back role, right back, left back, very versatile defender. Arne Slot has a lot of options to work with right now, and it's just very exciting to see where he takes it. But for me personally, that's how I would line it up based off of this past season, just based on the certain players that have been performing, based on the certain players who have not been performing. In terms of players leaving, there are certain players I didn't mention. We saw Thiago leave, of course. We have Matip leaving. Kelleher, who had a very important season for us this season, I believe. After a season like that, you need to be a number one. I don't think that he's going to accept anything as being a number two, so I definitely see him leaving. We're
Yep.
probably going to buy a backup goalkeeper because I don't see Adrian coming up and being the backup goalkeeper. Shimikas, he was out positioned by a center back playing. Obviously, Joe Gomez is Joe Gomez, but we need to face reality when you are a left back. Robertson was out multiple times. There was a time where Shimikas was also out, but when Robertson is out and your manager is preferring a center back playing awkward on the left back, but then outperforming you when you are a natural left back, I think it's
Mhm.
time to consider your future. I personally like Chimikas. He came in, did a job like he's supposed to do every single time.
Scored a penalty and won a cup final against us.
He scored a penalty against
Yeah.
Chelsea, got us a trophy, but I believe his time is up. I think that he needs to go to elsewhere. I could see him at like a Brentford, getting more minutes, being just a traditional starter, putting
Mhm.
a left back or left wing back. I could see us getting a new center back, obviously with us losing Matip, but I could also see us putting our trust in Kwanzaa. We've been linked with Pacho from Frankfurt. Me personally, I don't believe he's ready, but his stats prove otherwise. When you look into it and you see how many tackles he's involved in, how many progressive passes he has, his aggression, it screams Liverpool. It's like a left-sided Konate.
Mhm.
Me personally, if we went for a center back, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I just like the progression that we're making with Jarrell Kwanzaa.
Yep.
Um, very good player, very, very good player. I could see us getting a new winger. Like I said before, we don't know if Salah is going to stay. We don't know if he's not going to stay. I could see us getting Johan Bakayoko, similar in play style in terms of his progressive passes, the same as we used to see from a younger, kind of a less selfish Salah when we had Firmino and Mane and they would link up. I could see him that the way he dribbles, he has a lot. He's higher in terms of progressive dribbles than Salah. He averages your two, three progressive dribbles compared to your Salah, who's more of like the give me the ball and I'll try and find the back of the net. Bakayoko is more of that guy who's like I can take you on, more like a Jaden Sancho. I can take you on
Mhm.
and create for my teammates. I can, whether it's a whipped in cross or just a ball across the 18 or just inside the box. Um, I those are the main positions where I can see. Obviously, like I said, the six. I believe Ederson is a good shout, but we have a six option with Feyenoord. Obviously, there's a lot of players where people are saying that they could bring him in. Um, their current six, I forgive me if I butcher his name, Wild Flainer, or if I believe that's his name. He's capable of playing at that sixth position, and he's uh he's very like in terms of his game exactly what we want. Um, but again, that's all just comes with the fact that Arne Slot is coming to Liverpool. Maybe he brings over his former players, kind of like how we saw
Mhm.
with Ten Hag. Ten Hag went to United. He brought over Anthony, brought over Onana,
The fidget
um,
spinner.
the fidget spinner. I honestly, I don't think we'll have anything close to that. Obviously, he's okay now, not as great as he used to be for him under Ajax and
Mhm.
Onana. Same thing, not as great, but he's getting the job done. But like I said, Arne has a lot of options at his disposal.
Mhm.
It's a very exciting time. I don't believe there's any wrong answers to truly make unless we're going, uh, I don't know, to MLS and we're finding like bench players and starting them in. But I mean, you know me, I love numbers. Numbers don't lie. If you're performing, whether people say there's farmers leagues or other stuff, I believe football is football. If you're performing in a league, you're performing. If you're not performing in a league, you're not performing. We've seen players perform in the Prem, but then fail in Serie A. We've seen players perform in Serie A and then fail in the Prem, vice versa.
Yep.
If you're performing, you're performing. System is a very important thing behind that. And I believe in terms of the players that, or the way Michael Edwards loves to do his business, it's not necessarily who has the flashiest name, who has the biggest name, who's the biggest star. It's who's going to fit our system. Um, and that's going to help him working with Arne Slot, them doing together work is going to be very important, which is why I have the utmost faith in Arne Slot. I have the utmost faith in Michael Edwards and the project. He hasn't done me wrong yet. So I put the utmost faith in him in terms of tactical genius from Arne Slot and the
Mhm.
business genius from Michael Edwards. As a Liverpool fan, it's truly exciting times.
Yep. Yeah, you mentioned outgoings and stuff. I realized I didn't really touch on that. And then when you're talking about center backs, I realized I didn't talk about that either. But yeah, I think I'll talk about center backs and then that'll transition well into outgoings. But yeah, Maresca, when the left back tucks in to kind of be a third center back, he likes the middle center back. Yannick Vestergaard played this role in at Leicester, to kind of be the guy who also watches the press. He's able to distribute the ball. And so I think Badger fits that really, really, really well. And I actually think this could be kind of a fresh start for Badger because he's not um, great at defending in like a transitional team that can give up a lot of chances. And we saw him have a pretty terrible season this year, all things considered. Um, Saw him play out of position a little bit too at left back and stuff. And so I think this could be kind of a fresh start for Badger Shield. I don't expect him to go because he's on contract until 2030. So that's a long time. But he also, he's still young, and I'd like to see him and Colwell playing next to each other, especially with Badger Shield being more of a distributor. I think he's really good on the ball. Um, he's just kind of smart. He's composed. I think Adarabioyo will fit in that role well, kind of left center back. He is right-footed, but I think and he's played on the right side of the defense mostly. But I think when the fullback inverts or when the fullback tucks in to perform a third center back, him playing in the middle would be fine. And also, if you watch his highlights, a lot of his long balls are with his left foot. Interestingly enough, and I think he'd fit that role really well. And then, so Bajashil, him kind of competing for that role. I think Kukure and Colwell on the left side, and then right side, I think Chalobah could leave. And I don't want him to. I think he loves Chelsea. We need players like him, but the pure profit thing to be able to sell an academy graduate. I think Dizasi and Fofana will fill that role. I think Fofana and Chalobah fit it better than Dizasi, just because Dizasi isn't great on the ball. Like Chalobah and Fofana is, good on the ball as well. But I think that role does fit him because he's played right back, of course. Um, but that'd be a wide right center back, and then obviously tucking in when it's a back four. But yeah, I expect there to be a few outgoings. I think we have to make a break here, and then I think we can probably wrap up after that. But I'll get into outgoings, and then I think we can just about wrap up.